Scar and Cathy Hadley, and also Councillor Lizzie Bowen and Councillor Fiona Baker aren't with us this afternoon. So notification of requests from members of the public to address the meeting. There are none. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held in public on 17th December. Cabinet, we happy to agree those?
Agreed.
Very good. Declarations of interest by councillors, if there are any that we've not got covered in our declarations already? No. Okay. Item 5, announcements. Got no major announcements other than just to mention item 11 has been withdrawn, and I'll just ask Lucy to just give a bit of a background to why, if that's okay. Thank you.
So apologies in advance for having to withdraw the paper. We're hoping to put it on the forward plan for March or April, but this is a national director from NHS England who obviously approved the plans for the health system. At the moment, what they're looking at is still some challenges around meeting the financial recovery trajectories that they would like us to at a national level. So although the feedback we've had initially has been exceptionally positive around the Northamptonshire plan, obviously they want to make sure that if there are financial implications, that that's considered within budget. So we would expect to be able to publish the plans after budget at some point in March this year.
Thank you. So we'll go straight into item 6. Councillor Longley.
Thank you, Chair. Well, not a great deal to report other than if you turn to page 17, you'll see that the net position, the year-end forecast is running at an overspend of 549, which is down a bit from last month and going in the right direction, I'm pleased to say. The significant points there are that for the third month running, we've got a stable children's position. And that, of course, we said approaching the half year was the key point. And that seems to be holding. However, on the risk side of things, then we do know that we're having quite a bit of a traumatic impact down at the hospital side of things, and that could prove to be quite negative. So it's looking good for the year end. However, it's far too early to be optimistic at this stage. So that's our view as this tick of the clock. Second point I'd like to bring up is that we've actually had the settlement come through, which is very much in line with what all the officers had predicted, but in fact I think I'm right in saying it's about £100,000 better off. So, okay, not huge in our budget, but certainly the right side of the line. So that's my report this month, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Got Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the Scrutiny Committee, we've obviously had the opportunity to look at this report, and some of us have gone through it in some detail. We want to welcome the fact that we're looking now just at a £500,000 overspend, although when we discussed it, we did sort of take a pause and realise how bizarre that sounded, that we were sort of celebrating, if you like, a £500,000 overspend. And I think that's just obviously to do with the history that this council has been. We sort of found it a little bit bizarre. I'm not intending to make too many comments to Cabinet today from Scrutiny about this report, because we're looking on the 29th of this month in our Scrutiny meeting. We'll be looking in depth at the in-year financial position, and this latest report, of course, will be informing that. It'll be the starting point for those discussions. One thing that we will be looking at, just to give you a heads up though, I think on the 29th, this report is littered with lists of saving proposals from the original budget that are either not going to be met or not going to be met in full. It's also, again and again throughout the report, across various sort of departments of the council, one of the ways that the finances are being mitigated against those saving proposals not coming through is the financial benefit we're getting from not having filled staff vacancies. And one of the things I think we want to be getting an understanding of, hopefully on the 29th, is whether those two are related. Is it the extra pressure, the lack of capacity in our workforce that it has in some way meant some of those saving proposals are not going to be delivered? But I say, we'll be reporting back to Cabinet following our more detailed deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scrimshaw. Councillor Scott?
I was going to make the same sort of points on the staffing issues, Chair. So
they're covered.
I won't repeat them, just emphasise that there is a concern that we may be using the staff vacancies to, in one respect, it might be having an impact on the savings we could make if the staff are in position.
Okay, thank you. Well, before we go back to Councillor Longley, I just wanted to echo some of the points that you made at the beginning of the meeting, you know, to be talking about a net overspend variance of 549,000 at this point in the year, albeit is the wrong side of the line, given the history of what we've been through in the last 2 or 3 years, is a significant achievement as far as I'm concerned. And yes, we awaited the stabilisation of children's services, which has been critical in this year, but also you've got to recognise the fact the rest of the organisation has tried to make the effort to be as efficient and effective and contribute to the overall ask of the financial situation of the council. So that needs to be recognised, the hard work. I know the hard work, we speak about it every cabinet meeting, but it needs to be recognised across the board, the hard work of the senior management team. All the people in the various directorates hasn't gone unnoticed, and what we've got to do obviously is keep focused for the rest of the year and as we kick into the next budgetary year. But it's been an excellent reaction from the authority, and that needs to be noted. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just, before we get too excited, I would come back to Anna's area, where it's the hospital situation is still to play out, and we're only halfway through the winter. So typical in this job, you sort of look at the pessimistic side, not the optimistic. So that's what I'd say there. But also, if you are at your scrutiny meeting, there's a fair chance you'll have a good idea where period 9 stands too, which would be, I think, you'll find helpful as well. Thanks.
Okay, Cabinet, are we happy to agree with the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we move on to item 7. Councillor Longley.
Page, yeah. The big story here is that it's the capital reports you can obviously see, and the year-end outlook is a capital expenditure of 75 million. Now the significance of that is that so far, and we're talking period 8 now, 2/3 of the way through the year, that the spend is 32.5, and there's a lot of detail in there that shows where we think that will be added into this year. However, the original budget was 121, and so it is likely, I think, that 75 is on the shade too high. But I think that the significance that comes for me out of this report is that the capital projects that have gone in there have had good business case. Anybody that listened to the budget back in February last year, seems an age ago, will remember that we defined how capital would be spent this year in a more disciplined manner, and this is in fact very much the result of that happening. So 75 million is the forecast outlook, but that's likely to be a tad lower. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, there are no speakers on this. Are there any points to raise through Cabinet? Okay, we're happy to agree the report. Thank you. So item 8. Councillor Morris.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So we're being asked to consider the notes and feedback received from the consultation process, agree to the closure of the Evelyn Wright Care Home and the transfer of the customers to other services. We're also asked to declare the property surplus to requirements once the service is closed and delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Commercial in consultation with the Cabinet member, for Place and the Cabinet Member for Finance to agree the terms of any disposal, to note the contents of the report, and last but by no means least, and very important, to note the contents of the Equality Impact Assessment. Chair, we've discussed this sort of a lot over the last few cabinets, so I'm not going to go into any huge detail, except to say that in many ways the home is not fit for purpose. While obviously moving people out is not always ideal, when a place is not really fit for purpose and or needs a lot of money spending on it in order to bring it up to standard, you end up probably having to move them out and move the customers out anyway in order to do the refurbishment, if that was what we were doing, which we're not, because it wouldn't be effective. So we have consulted with all the people in the home and obviously given them lots of options that they can take up once the home is closed, and I believe some have already been moved and the remainder will be removed over the next few months. So we've taken a very cautious approach to this, but feel that it's the right measure to take. So, Chair, I recommend the paper to the Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Reading the report is absolutely obvious that this home is going to have to close and people moved. But there are questions that need to be asked about that. So the question I asked at a previous Cabinet that I never did get a reply to was why, on our watch, has this building been allowed to deteriorate to the extent that it has? I'm really worried about that, and I think it probably would mean that we need to undertake a review of all our similar assets to make sure that we are maintaining the right kind of standards, because in a way this is totally unacceptable, isn't it? I'm really worried that we're looking at a loss of 29 beds when we know we're short of beds across the county, and we're short of our own beds. There was a promise a while ago that we would start trying to insource more provision, instead of which we seem to be allowing the market to dictate to us what is going on. One of the questions I want to ask is what measures are going to be used to ensure that these people are going to be moved into a good standard of accommodation? So are we looking at places that have been through a QC inspection recently, and how do we know? What is the measure that's going to be used? We know that when frail, elderly, vulnerable people experience these kind of moves, it often accelerates death rates. So is there going to be tracking of what the outcomes for these people who are being moved is over a period of time? I am really concerned that the consultation only managed to get to 10% of the users of this service. I don't find that at all satisfactory, so I'd like to know what measures were taken. And I understand there would have been communication and other difficulties. I understand that, but I do think hearing the voice of the users is really important. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about how that was done. And then lastly, I'm really bothered about the proposal that we dispose of all the asset. I'm hoping that just means the building and not the land. I don't think we are on the right trajectory if we see disposal as a solution to problems, when we should be looking at how we maximise the value of all our land and all our assets. So I'd like to understand a bit more of how that proposal came to be on the table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Morris, just a point.
Yes, Chair.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
You know, there are some concerns raised there, and one of the questions on behalf of Cabinet, I just wanted to check with you, is that we've done as much as we possibly can to ensure that the outcomes are the right ones for the people that are in their care home.
Yes, I can certainly say that we have done that. And in fact, some of our officers were at Evelyn Wright last week, meeting the families and the customers, and to report on this report and to outline the recommendations, and also giving them the support and talking them through what will happen next. So, and this has been an ongoing process to answer some of Councillor Stone's questions. It's been an ongoing process with the residents for some considerable time, and the options that they are going to will, I would hope, be providing a higher level of care, given the fact that this building was in fact in not a great state, with some of the rooms are even uninhabitable, as I understand it. So I think they are going to be going to better care homes. Now, obviously, it's not ideal moving people, and we understand that, but that's why we've been going through this process for some considerable time with the residents. In terms of the state of the building, the reason we are moving them is because the building has become, well, there's two reasons. The upkeep of the building, obviously it needed a major overhaul, and it's not really the sort of size of unit that I think people would want to see now within the provision. It's too small almost for what we provide in the county, but I can assure you that they are getting the best possible advice and are being very much looked after as best they can be. And obviously, it is distressing to move people from where they live, but I think we're giving them every chance to vent their frustrations, but also to move them to a suitable home within a reasonable location. I think fair enough on that, Chair. I can't say any more, unless Anna would like to add something. Thank you, Anna.
If you'd like to offer a couple of comments.
Just a couple of things. So, in terms of provision, in that area, in the Daventry area, we've got one care home that's opening, not a council care home, but a new care home that's opening this year with 50 spaces. The second one is in planning permission, and one large extra care scheme is also opening in the vicinity. So as it stands at the moment until 2024, we have got enough spaces and will have enough spaces in Daventry to meet all the projected need, and there are plans afoot then to do more and more in sourcing after that. In terms of the decline of the building, we had been talking to a developer who was going to buy the building, decant the people, refurbish the building, rebuild the building, and then take the residents back. That provider pulled out as it was uneconomic. So for a year or so, we had hoped that that would be the case in the resolution. When they pulled out, we didn't have much choice than to make this decision. So it wasn't that we just let it decline. We had an active plan, and that was all pulled out at the last minute. In terms of the quality measures, every home that someone gets moved to will always be CQC registered. We wouldn't use unregistered ones, and we will monitor the quality as normal and what happens to those people. And every individual will end up in a place that's assessed to meet their need. It's not a question of just us saying they're going to one place. We'll do an individual assessment with every family and with every person to put them in the place that meets their needs.
Thank you. Anything further to add? You okay?
No, I don't think so. I think Anna's, as usual, answered that very well.
Okay,
Thank you,
Cabinet,
Chair.
we happy to agree the reports? Thank you. So item 9, Councillor Smithers, street light in PFI.
Thank you, Chairman. Back in 2011, this authority entered into a PFI contract with Connected Roads for the provision of street lighting maintenance. The contract was procured jointly with Cambridgeshire, and as a result of the Connected Roads operating both contracts, they've achieved savings which are ring-fenced into the Synergy Saving Fund. The value of the fund is currently sitting at 1.67 million. The contract states that the money should be used to prepay some of the senior debt, resulting in a rebate to the authority of approximately £120,000 per annum. However, we have proposed to reinvest the fund into the existing assets that do not meet the current contract specification, such as the older sodium lamps, which can be upgraded to LED lamps. The fund should be sufficient enough to upgrade approximately 3,500 of those assets. Connected Roads and the lending banks have agreed to do this, but it requires a deed of variation to the contract. It is anticipated that the fund, in this manner, will bring forward savings that are equal or greater than the rebate that would result from prepaying the senior debt as a result of a lower energy and maintenance costs. The deed of variation will also be used to confirm changes that have already been made during the contract thus far, including increasing the interval between lighting scouts from 14 to 28 days and increasing the emergency response time from 1 to 2 hours, both back in line with the Northampton County Council policy. The Council has now received the first draft of the Deed of Variation, and this is being reviewed by LGSS Law. The documents that have been published on the website contain an updated financial section which clarifies the financial implication, but unfortunately our packs have been printed by the time this service realised that the latest version had not been included. It is proposed to delegate the authority to the Executive Director of Place and Commercial in consultation with myself, and take all steps agreed to execute the Deed of Variation to allow these changes to take place as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. There are no speakers registered on this, so I know we've discussed this. It seems a very sensible thing to be doing, so we're happy to agree at Cabinet. Thank you. So item 10, I will be taking this as Councillor Baker isn't here today. So this is the determination of the admission arrangements for the schools where Northamptonshire County Council is the admission authority for the 2021 intake. I won't talk a great deal about this because basically there are no changes, and it's the same admission criteria as came before Cabinet last year. So we're asked to determine the 2021 admission arrangements for the schools where Northamptonshire County Council is the admission authority, agree the relevant area for schools in Northamptonshire, and agree the primary and secondary coordinated schemes used by the school's admissions team. So there's a lot contained in the report, but as I say, there's nothing different than last year. We do have to bring this before Cabinet every year. If there are changes, they have to be consulted on. There hasn't been any consultation because there are no changes. So I'll just leave it there and ask Councillor Birch for her comments.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd agree that this is exactly the same as last year. And in fact, I think there are fewer and fewer cases where parents are dissatisfied. I think more people are getting what they would wish for their children. And if they don't, I think the appeals system is robust. What I have a concern about is the children with the education, health and care plans. We don't have enough special schools within the county for these children, and what is going to happen to them when they don't have a place? If the schools are asked to go over their published admissions number, does funding follow that child? Because sometimes these young people need huge support within the secondary schools. And I think it's where this is a particular problem when the transition from primary to secondary. Primary schools, children can manage to be supported within an environment, within their classroom. When they get to secondary schools, the bell rings, they change room, they change subject, they change teacher. And it's that sort of support management within schools that's so crucial if they remain in the normal sort of secondary provision. What are we going to do with the children that do not have places within special schools? And there's also this problem of not just the children with the education and healthcare plans, but high needs young people who again need special care within the school, special support. So I'd like to know how we are going to look after all of those children within the county, please.
Okay, thank you. So EHC plans, I am aware that funding does follow the child, as does the service that gets wrapped around the child when an EHC plan is given, because I'm sure... Yeah, well, I'm sure many colleagues will know that EHC plans replace statements, of which Northamptonshire, I understand, was quite a high statement in authority compared to others around the country. But EHC plans, there is quite a significant level of service that goes with a child, and there was something called the local offer put in place, of which the Northamptonshire local offer is quite a good and comprehensive services, as I understood it to be. In terms of special school places, I think Northamptonshire actually does very well in providing special school places and meeting the needs of children with special needs. It isn't everybody's choice, because I have a couple of friends that have children with special needs that they attend a special school. Some of them are very keen that their child actually attends a mainstream school, and I know that every support is given to those children when they do that. In terms of high needs and the pressure on high needs, that is a national issue, and it's something the likes of the County Councils Network and the LGA continues to lobby government on, the fact that the high needs block of funding, particularly all around the country, is a pressurised area, and we need government to hear that more and potentially obviously allocate more money for special needs and that high needs block. But in terms of the job that our team do in relation to the schools admissions, I think they do a very good job. We always publish those rates of preferences and that at the right and given times, and we always perform very well. So I'm happy that, like I say, we don't need to consultate, put a consultation out on any, or have had to put a consultation out on this paper because it hasn't changed. So I'm satisfied we are and continue to do the right thing. So, Cabinet, are we happy with the paper? Thank you. Yeah, item 11 is the one we referred to at the beginning. So, item 12, the Energy Procurement Risk Management Strategy. Councillor Smithers.
Thank you, Chairman. So the main points of this is to agree the value of a new contract of 12 million over the next 4 years, starting in October 2020. The energy contract covers all the council buildings and street lighting. The report includes recommendations to buy green energy. This will cost an additional 100,000 K per annum based on 2019-2020 figures. However, it will also support the Council's declaration of a climate change emergency. Current financial success from the energy contracts, competitive lower energy prices, additional costs would arise in the region of 2 million per annum, as any suppliers not part of the agreed contract would be liable of out-of-contract penalty rates. Full invoice validation and query management resolution service, cost avoidance valued at over £1 million. i.e. all bills are checked before paying, flexible risk managed procurement in line with government recommendations and the industry's best practice, i.e. we buy energy when it is cheap together with other local authorities through the laser buying consortium. We are seeking approval to extend the scope of the contract to include other public sector bodies and trusts within the county, such as healthcare providers, police, leisure trusts, etc. And also private sector organisations that have direct service delivery contacts with the council, such as care homes. Back in September 2016, Cabinet approved a paper titled Energy Procurement Risk Management Strategy, which built upon the achieved success of the previous contracts and authorised new contracts from the Laser, which is part of the Kent County Council buying consortium, until the end of September 2020. We've also included the Northamptonshire Borough District and councils because they also utilise Laser under the different service arrangements. The proposed energy procurement risk management strategy is highly flexible and adaptable to support the local government reform as we're going under in Northamptonshire at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Hales? Oh, sorry, Councillor Strachan, yes, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. We acknowledge the need for this new energy contract, but this contract is for 4 years. We just want to know, is it because a 4-year contract would provide a better deal in terms of value for money? On page 55, 4.2, it says, I quote, following Cabinet approval, consultation will take place with borough and district colleagues. Chairman, are you anticipating agreement on this 4-year contract for both unitary going forward? In terms of the recommendations, Chairman, I take it that 6.21 on page 57 and 58 is the combination of 6.1.1 and 6.1.2 on page 56 for the supply of gas and electrical energy. Also, recommendation 6.31 is for the electrical fittings, and 6.32 is, as stated in the subheader, fully managed services. That's for the invoicing and that sort of stuff. Finally, Chairman, 6.9 on page 59 refers to carbon neutral energy at an additional cost of 100K per annum based on the 2019-2020 data. We welcome this, but Chairman, who will monitor this? How would this council know it is getting value for money in terms of consuming only green energy? Those are the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smithers, do you want to respond to this?
Yeah, I mean, everything that this authority does at the moment is run by sort of leaders from all the other authorities to ensure that they're on board with what we're doing, and we have their agreement for that. And also in the report, it is the proposed energy procurement risk management strategy is highly flexible as well, which allows people to sort of chip in and chip out as and when. So, you know, the other authorities, when they will come under the two unitaries, will be able to adopt this and come in and out as they wish.
Okay, thank you.
Leader, could I just mention? Discussed with all the districts and boroughs as well prior to coming here.
Yeah, thank you. And we've discussed this. Obviously, it's another good scheme that can save an awful lot of money and makes use of economies of scale and efficiency. So, see it as something we should be supporting. So, Cabinet, we happy to agree that? So item 13 is the early intervention targeted support services for children in Corby from 2020-21 onwards. So we're asked this afternoon to grant a further contract on the same terms and conditions as the existing supply for the period up to 31st of March 2021. And as in point 2 recommendations, the waiver of the contract procedure rules in the NCC Constitution in order to make the direct award of this contract without a competitive process. And we were asked to delegate authority to the Director of Children's Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education to re-procure early intervention targeted support services for children under 5 years old and their families in Corby from 1st of April 2021. So this service currently operates within the Corby area, is currently delivered by the Corby Children's Centre Consortium Interest Company. As it states in the report, it runs out on the 30th of March 2020. So this report just seeks to put a contract in place until 2021, when of course we will be in the new unitary arrangements. So I see this as non-controversial. It continues to support the services that are already there. The money envelope is still the same, and I'm happy that it's before us today. We've got Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. Pen Green is in my division, and in fact I was one of the people that helped form the Corby Children's Centre Consortium. I think it was 2015. And at that time, it was in receipt of over £900,000 a year. So you can see the drop it's had. If it was a school, that wouldn't happen. They're limited to a maximum of 5%, and in reality it's usually about 1.6, 1.7%. But I do recognise that this funding is continued, and I certainly welcome that. It is, of course, a cut because it doesn't recognise inflation. Neither did the previous one. In fact, it cut even further, the previous one. Part of the proposal is to restructure early years intervention targeted support services for children under 5-year-old and their families in Corby from the 1st of April 2021 onwards. I well recall the process that led to the rest of the county being contracted to national bodies where organisations that had multiple sites could gain points by quoting at least their best 2 sites, ignoring, of course, the other sites that were perhaps way below that standard and they weren't taken into consideration. But they got the points for the extra sites, which sites like Pen Green and Camrose are totally unable to do. They only have the 1 site. So I do trust that the process won't be repeated when you look at the retendering for this and putting forward the rules for bidding. I trust that will be a light touch regime. Pen Green, as I think everyone recognises, is an internationally recognised organisation, a nationally recognised organisation. It carries out work on behalf of the Australian government, and it's recently had an application from the Indian government to do foundation work in early years for that. It is an excellent centre, a centre of excellence, and centres like that, in my view, should not have to apply for funding more or less every year. Their funding should be in a similar manner to the schools, and the restrictions on the amount they cut should be similar to schools. This particular funding is only part of the funding to Pen Green. 1.7 million they have has to be earned by themselves, which they do in the Research and Learning Centre. And that's the arm that has the contracts for training up to PhD level. And the other parts of the centre emanated from way back about 35 years when the steelworks closed. It's been an excellent centre for years. Problem at the moment, which I hope you'll give me leeway on talking about for a bit.
3 minutes, Rob, if you could.
Can I have a few
off.
more seconds?
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to highlight the other area so that people are aware of it. And that's the area of the schools forum, the funding that comes from that through our director. And that's in relation to the early years school funding formula, which again, year on year, has been cut. And this year, the nurseries within the county will be losing around 207,000, 29% of the total clawback under the national formula, which is a massive amount, especially when you look at the fact that that's 9 nurseries out of a total of 730 providers. That's 29% of the total clawback. Massive amount. So I'd like the Cabinet to bear that in mind when it comes to their presentation to the Schools Forum, which I understand is imminent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the leeway.
Councillor Morris?
It was just an observation, Chair, if I may. I think the key issue here is to remember that the funding is remaining the same. It's remaining the same as it was last year. So we've obviously recognised within the remits of what we do the importance of the work they do, and we've tried our hardest to obviously keep the funding at the same level. So it was just an observation. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Morris. Exactly, that's the point. This paper is obviously about that funding. It's been recognised that it offers considerable value, what the contract provides, and we're doing the right, the question to me, are we doing the right thing? What are the choices here? Well, we're supporting it to the same level as last time, and that's what this paper specifically talks about. If we talk about schools funding, that is a separate issue, and that's maybe something else for another day. But in terms of everybody recognises the value, the likes of Pen Green adds and brings to Corby. I've been there, and I know a number of colleagues have as well, and it is an internationally renowned place, and in this capacity we continue to support it. And of course we know that it's not just this funding but other funding sources as well. But in terms of what's before us today, are we doing the right thing by honouring this contract for another year? The answer is yes. So I think we can proceed happily and contently, knowing that. So, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report? Thank you. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.